So that's where it requires the expertise of someone like us to help you understand what the valuation is. And they don't, and very frequently they're going to give you an offer that's just going to be a lump sum number. And they're not going to articulate out how they're arriving at that. But what they have to do in valuing that claim is look at it like in the eyes of what a jury would ultimately determine. And there's three main categories of, or elements of damages that are factored into a value of a claim. You're going to have your medical expenses to the extent they've been incurred, and to the extent they will be incurred in the future if you have medical testimony that would establish more likely than not you're going to need it. Then you'll have the wages that the individual lost. That's the person that was hurt. There were some questions there about the parent. The parent's lost time and things along those lines are not typically going to be something that's included. There's some situations when you're dealing with a major loss where you can potentially have some what's called like a filial consortium that can potentially factor in, but in this accident does not sound like that would be something that would be a major component. And then if we're dealing like in this case with an auto accident, if you have what is medically determined to be a permanent injury, or there's also scarring and disfigurement, there's several categories under the statute. If you meet that level of injury, then you can recover for what's called non-economic damages, the pain, the suffering, the mental anguish, the loss of enjoyment of life, the things you can't do or it's more difficult to do now when suffering from the injuries that you have from the accident. So all of those have to be factored in. And for something, you know, one thing that was mentioned, your time, but the individual's time, you need to properly document that, get the pay stubs, the wages, what they're being, the time they're missed. And it's important that that gets packaged up and presented to the insurance company properly, so that you can make sure that they're taking in all of those elements of the damages. And then you got to question them when they give you the offer. What is it based off? What are you considering? And you push and pull. And we have experience. We deal with these claims every day. We have a very good awareness of what claims, depending on what treatment you have, the nature of the collision, all of these go into factoring how that claim should be valued, because you're looking at it through the prism of, if you don't get it resolved, what would a jury do with it? And so it's very difficult to try to do that assessment on your own when you get into the injury realm. Property damage, many times that's something you should be able to take care of on your own. And it's usually, while it can be frustrating, it's usually a fairly straightforward, understandable process.
Right. Really, the way Ted described it, there's really two types of damages when you're talking about injury claims. You have your economic damages, which are things you can put a price tag on, a medical bill, a wage slip showing how much you make at your job. Items that were damaged in your car, your vehicle, your cell phone that was smashed when the wreck happened. Those are all economic damages because you can put a price tag on them. But you can't really put a price tag on pain or inconvenience or mental anguish or things that the non-economic damages type of category of damages. And so that's really, it's left up to a jury. What would a jury award? And it becomes so much more than just what's the nature of the injury. It's how does that injury affect your life? How does that injury affect your ability to go and do the things you like to do? Does your injury keep you from being able to get a good night's sleep every night? Does your injury keep you from being able to get out and play football or throw the baseball with your kids? Does it keep you from being able to walk up and down stairs? These are all sorts of things that we don't think about, but it's something we do every single day. I mean, imagine, you get up in the morning, you walk to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you wash your hair. What if you couldn't do those things because you have an injury? And we're talking about things that really impact people's lives, which is at the end of the world. Are they going to keel over and die right then? Probably not. But it's something that is constant. It's every single day. And there's a value to that. And then the problem, like you said, is there's no formula for it. It's not like a jury pulls out a little book and says, okay, a rotator cuff injury and this and this much money. It's not like that. It really just depends on the individual circumstances, which is really why you need an attorney that can help translate that information to a jury so they can kind of understand it in a real world context. We have a rule in jury trials. We're not allowed to ask a jury, what would you do if this was you? What would you do if this was your husband or your wife or your child? It's something we call the golden rule. You're not allowed to put the jury. However, you've tried a lot of cases. I've tried a lot of cases. I mean, between us, we've got pushing 50 years worth of experience, doing this type of work. And we know that every single jury thinks about it that way. So our job is to make sure they understand that this is, they talk about it's personal injury. It's the injury to you that makes it personal. And that's why you really need a skilled attorney that can come in and understand those nuances, understand a way to relay those that information so that a jury gives you the maximum
Paint
compensation.
that picture so they can understand what you deal with, and because the point is to try to get you, to compensate you like you would have been before the accident.
Right.
And so that gets difficult depending on how many factors you have, and so you just got to make sure you get that image and that information properly to the insurance company, and if they don't analyze it and evaluate it properly, that's when we file suit and proceed through that process.
That's right. You know, the first part of Clark's question, though, when he talked about the property damage, and you hit on it a little bit where you said, sometimes vehicles are damaged and they can be repaired, and sometimes vehicles are damaged and they can maybe be repaired, but the cost to repair the vehicle ends up being such that, if the vehicle's worth $5,000, why would you pay $5,000 to fix a $5,000 vehicle?
Right.
And in that situation, or if the damage is just, it's completely undrivable, bent frame, airbags deployed, windows busted out, doors don't open, probably no matter how valuable the vehicle is, it's probably something that an insurance company would declare a total loss. Now, depending on, because most claims, most accidents, most of them, property damage is the most common claim, which is probably why if you look on your policy and you look at the premium that they charge for the different coverages, bodily injury liability, uninsured motorist coverage, property damage liability, you'll probably notice that your property damage liability coverage is one of the most expensive.
Right, per dollar value.
Per dollar value, because it's the most common claim. Think of fender benders in the parking lot, side swipes, something you walk out from, you've been at the movie and you walk out and somebody's dinged your door. All of these go into the property damage. So, what is an insurance company responsible for doing if your vehicle can be repaired? Right? You're going to be without it for a time period, but what is the insurance company responsible to do at a minimum?
At a minimum, they have to put that car back into the position it was before that particular accident. Now, that if you're talking about a fender bender, that's likely just the repair and replacement of the vehicle. Now, if you do not have rental car coverage, depending on the dynamics of the situation, you may be without the ability to have that under your coverage. On a liability claim, that's something you could still pursue against the other, the at-fault parties, because then you have the situation of, are you going under your own policy, under the comprehensive or collision portion, or are you going under the liability property damage of the person that caused the accident? But if you get into a situation where you're talking about more significant damage, there is, in addition to the damage of repairing the vehicle, assuming it can be repaired without getting into the total loss scenario, there's another element that you can have of diminution in value. Right. Because everyone knows once your vehicle has been severely damaged, that's a ding on your Carfax. That's going to be a ding on the resale of the vehicle. Now, those are not easy to pursue, but that is something that can be looked into and is an avenue or an element of the damages that you can recover.
If you know who damaged your car and they have liability coverage, at a minimum, you're going to get your car fixed. You're going to be put in a rental car while your car is unavailable, or they're going to pay you for the loss of use, which was the cost to rent a car.
During that period.
And then the diminished value is a third component, which insurance companies typically don't tell you about. But it is a recoverable damage. If you have a pretty significant damage to your vehicle, diminished value is something you absolutely want to inquire about.
And it's also going to matter about how valuable the vehicle is, whether or not that's going to read something that's really going to move the needle or not.
But that's something that obviously we can always walk you through. We have a call. Billy called in. I believe I didn't hear it was in my ear. I think it was Billy's from Jackson County, I believe. Is that right? Bay County. Billy. Sorry about that, Billy. Billy from Bay County. Go ahead with your question.
I was involved in a 4-vehicle car collision. I was the third vehicle. An Escalade hit a 4Runner. The 4Runner hit me and kind of went over me and hit the car in front of me. I would like to know I know the Escalade hit the 4Runner, and from my understanding as I speak, they don't have insurance, because it was a rental car. Would the 4Runner cover my damages on my car?
Billy, the only time I could see the 4Runner being responsible for your damages is if that vehicle hit you first, and then was rear-ended by the Escalade. But typically, it sounds to me in that scenario, the Escalade hit a car, hit the 4Runner, 4Runner hit you, and then you were pushed into this other vehicle. The Escalade driver is the one that will be at fault. Now, you mentioned it was a rental vehicle. There could be coverage under a rental policy. It depends.
Right.
You can select it. But the other thing I'd want to check out too is, especially if you're dealing with any sorts of injuries, and we've talked about it on the show a lot, is uninsured motorist coverage.
Right.
What Billy just asked about this question, for those of y'all watching, this is the prime example of why you want to have uninsured motorist coverage. It is coverage that will step in to compensate you for your injuries in the event you're hit by somebody that doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough insurance. And let's say this Escalade did have insurance, but it was a minimal policy.
Right.
You have the potential of occupants in the 4Runner. You have Billy and whoever was in his vehicle and the vehicle that Billy was pushed into. All of those folks, the drivers and the passengers, if there are some, they can all make a claim against the Escalade as well. And now you start adding up all these claims, even if they have an okay policy, you can see how those benefits could be diminished very quickly if you have to spread them out to multiple people.
Right. Because this is not a strict liability situation, Billy. That vehicle that ran into you has to have had some culpability or fault.
Right.
If they're being pushed into you, then that's not something that
Right.
they did negligent. They didn't fail to use reasonable care. But many times those rental cars are required to at least maintain through the rental agency, whereas they're not required to maintain super levels of coverage. They're at least required to maintain the state minimums, which would be a $10,000 worth of property damage per vehicle, $20,000 for the whole accident spread through all those vehicles. So at a minimum, there should be that under Florida law. But then you also need to look at the individual driver's personal policy as well. It's always important when you're dealing with rental cars. We see this all the time. Many times when people are down here renting cars, they may be here for work. So you need to make sure whether or not there is a potential employer, because if you're in the course and scope of employment, there can be liability there. And that's something we have to do all the time. I mean, anytime in Florida you have an accident, there's at least 3 parties you're going to be looking at. You're going to be looking at the driver who was negligent, the owner of the vehicle under the dangerous instrumentality doctrine. That means in Florida, if you own the vehicle, you are more or less as liable as the driver, with certain caveats on the amount of damages. And then if you're doing something for somebody, if you were in the course of some venture. So if you're down here on a business trip and flew in and now you're going somewhere, typically if you're flying in and here for work, everything you do while you're down here is more likely than not going to be considered in the course and scope. So Billy, there's options there, but it's important that you have someone help you do that.
Absolutely. Billy, thanks for the call. We're going to go ahead and take our first break of the night. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. My name again is Les McFadder. I'm with Ted Howell with the law firm of Perry & Young, and this is Law Call, where we are discussing your legal questions live on the air. So give us a call or shoot us an email at lawcall@wnbb.com. And tonight we're talking about car and truck wrecks.
Yes.
If y'all didn't tune in to the first segment, you got an earful about the importance of uninsured motorist coverage
Absolutely.
and various forms of liability. You know, I was thinking about, I keep going back to that property damage question because, you know, I had a case earlier this week where an individual called and they were without a vehicle. They were told that there were no rental cars. They had no way to go about getting a rental car from one of the agencies, and they didn't really know what to do. And in this particular case, the person had been driving a vehicle they used for work. They were unable to get to work. They were unable to do their job, and just completely lost. And the insurance company, you know, really didn't offer any sort of solutions for it. They said, well, you know, sorry. But, you know, in that particular situation, you know, sometimes people have to do something themselves. You know, we
Right.
talk about, you might have heard the term, you know, mitigating your damages, and a lot of times it has to do with your wages or things like that. But, you know, what is a mitigating? What does it mean to mitigate your damages? If, you know, if you're in a situation where you cannot do something, but there are things you can do, what's the responsibility?
Well, just the classic example of failure to mitigate that many people have probably dealt with in our local communities after Hurricane Michael is if your roof has got a hole in it, you can't
Right.
just sit there and let the water keep coming
Right.
in. You have to take some action, tarp it, and try to minimize future damage.
Right.
So, I mean, what failure to mitigate just requires you to do is to take reasonable
Right.
actions that were within your power to do to mitigate or minimize the consequences of your damages. I mean, you know, we see sometimes in our cases that are litigated, they'll raise those types of defenses and try to argue that the client's not following through with the treatment that the doctors
Right.
recommend or things of that nature. So it's always important to be your own advocate and to do what you can within your power to make yourself better and to minimize the damages that are ultimately. You can't just sit back and say, I've hit the gravy train, I'm going to take this through to the finish line. So it's very critical and important that you do. So for example, in that situation, there's obviously some cars out there somewhere. So you got to find that alternative market maybe even to go look at a vehicle.
Okay, very good. Again, I got another in my ear. We have an email that came through. Let's go ahead and put that up. I was in an accident in 2019. My car was totaled, and before they would pay it off, I had to sign some papers. One was about any injuries. I put a note there on that my back was hurt in the accident, but I felt better. Since then, it's been very easy to pull my back out doing simple tasks, and the pain is getting to be constant. I'm losing my job because I can't sit for long periods. What would I be able to go back on that claim? And that's from Gabriella. So
2019 is the first problem.
well, 2019 is the first problem because we're already past the statute of limitations for bringing a lawsuit. So,
And that's an important thing. In 2019, that would have been a 4-year statute of limitations that we had. Your legislators, in their infinite wisdom, have reduced that down to 2 now,
Right.
because that's obviously beneficial for everybody. I'm being sarcastic. So in that, anything after March of 2023 is a 2-year statute of limitation, but even under the longer 4-year statute of limitation, that would not be feasible
Right.
at this point. And
yeah.
unfortunately, what she was discussing there was a property damage release.
Right.
There was no reason for there to be any mention or discussion of her bodily injury claim.
right. So the first problem is it's probably too long to go back
Right.
because it's been more than 4 years. And number 2, you may have very well signed a release. And once you sign a release and accept money, consideration for that claim, it's over. There is no recourse at that point. So hopefully that's not the case. But we're going to go ahead and take our last break of the evening, and we'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. Again, we're wrapping up another show here of Law Call, where we talked about car and truck wrecks and motorcycle. We didn't really talk about motorcycle wrecks.
No, we didn't.
But it's
be careful when the motorcycle. Usually the vehicle wins, and those are very, very dangerous. And that's one thing that we see a lot: people pulling out in front of motorcycles.
Oh, no.
They don't check, and we're just instinctively don't notice the difference. So, especially our young drivers that are getting their license, it's really a big issue for me now. With my daughter getting her license, I'm very, very cautious in describing to her when she's turning into the right of way to make sure she's looking and that it's clear.
Yeah, and the other thing, motorcycles, the insurance requirements for vehicles is not the same as it is for motorcycles, and so if you are unfortunate enough to be involved in a wreck while operating a motorcycle, there's a lot of differences in the law that are going to apply that you might want to talk with an attorney about that. Not just obviously for the claim, but there's a lot of things that can be done. And pull out your policy. We talk about it every year. Pull out your insurance policy. Look at the type of coverage you have, and if you got any questions about it, call us. Go, talk to your agent. Ask them what the coverages are and what it is that protects you. And I think maybe on another show in the future, might bring a policy in and kind of dissect it for folks, so they can they can have a good idea as to is there coverage right for them. Right. So, all right, well, good show so far. You got any shout outs?
I do. I think we've got a picture back there. I got a real special announcement. This is congratulations to Garrett Guthrie and Kylie Birch. Kylie is my main paralegal, Trina Birch's daughter there. They just got engaged tonight. We're very, very, very happy for them, and I know Trina's very, very excited, as we all are for her. So congratulations, guys. And then I did notice, I did not know that before we got on the show, but that Gary Starr's granddaughter was the Scholar Athlete of the Week.
How about that?
Gary is our #1 Law Call fan. Well, I don't want to upset Miss Pam. They may have a running debate there, but
Rick at the Marlin might have something to say too.
Right, there may be a couple. We'll run a poll on that. But congratulations, Gary and family, on Sarah's Scholar Athlete we saw earlier today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations to Gary, his granddaughter, and their whole family. I get a few shout outs. Miss Pam, as always, I love you. Thank you for watching. My mom and dad, my wife, my kids. My son should be in bed, but he's up late doing his homework. Nick and Lauren, my sweet neighbors Ed and Jamie, I love y'all. I just want to say thanks again to the Perry and Young staff for everything that y'all do for us, and so we can live the dream and do live TV on Sunday nights at 10:35.
Well, it literally takes a village. It takes a team. And,
it does.
We can't do what we do without the great support staff and coworkers that we have that helps every element of a case work from start to finish.
That's exactly right. And I did say Rick at the Marlin earlier, but Rick, don't forget, man, I got you as well. Larry's actually down in trial this week.
Yep, he'll be down in Fort Lauderdale, so we'll be looking out for him and looking for some good news at the end of the week, and we'll be making sure the ship stays on the train stays on the tracks.
I know. We may be small town lawyers, but we spread those wings every now and then.
Wherever we need to be.
That's right. Wherever y'all need us, we're here. Folks, again, thank y'all for tuning in to listen to me and Ted yammer on about car and truck wrecks and motorcycle wrecks and injury claims. We're here every week. Stay tuned, and God bless. Have a good week.
Good night.